Welcome to the Clean Truth, where we like to call bullshit on the status quo. What's up? Welcome back to the Clean Truth. I'm Don. I'm your host. No Silver Fox today. I wanted him to be on this one, but he had a scheduling conflict with being the guest of the honor today. But he had family obligations, so we're gonna give him a pass. I always like to start out every show and thank Monster Energy and Rain Energy. They keep us well caffeinated here at the office like a bunch of spider monkeys. So thank you, Brett, and all and those guys. And then our guest today is Stephanie Mock. How you doing?
What's going on? Silver Fox. What a name.
I'm
doing great.
Ben has silver hair, so.
It wasn't always silver, I feel like. Back in the day, it wasn't. So
No.
You guys must be stressing him out. I don't know.
He's under a lot of stress these days. Mm-hmm. Well, Stephanie, before we get into it, we always play a little game at the beginning of every show, and we have this thing called the Clean Truth. And so what I do is it's basically, we started out as Truth or Dare, to be honest with you, and it was like the dares were fitness-related things, like do 100 burpees or something like that. And in full transparency, me and Ben slacked off so bad we quit doing them. I think because we got scared of some of the ones that people were daring us to do. So we just changed it to just the truth now. So I picked a good one today, and this girl asked me, if you could be one fictional character, who would you be?
One fictional character? That's a very difficult question. One fictional character. I don't know why, some badass lady from Lord of the Rings, popped into my mind, but I don't know. I'm a sorcerer, so maybe sign me up for something like that.
I respect that.
The one that instantly came to mind for me was Jumper. Do you remember the movie Jumper where the kid could, teleport to, anywhere he wanted to just by thinking about it?
Yep.
That'd be awesome.
That sounds way better than mine. But yeah, that's quite the truth.
What about you, Scott? You're probably like Batman or something.
Probably Iron Man. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Any person in the world, you pick Tony Stark, Iron Man.
He's kind of cool. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, Stephanie, thank you for your time today. I know you're probably busy. Your name got mentioned as a guest to come on the show because we were sitting around here in the office talking about, who can we get on this show? And we've had a lot of people from Summer Strong come on here, and we've had a lot of people from the Sorinex community come on here because they're just savage human beings. They're awesome humans. And I said, you know what? We have interviewed a lot of men on this show. And I said, we need a group of women who have done some extraordinary shit and then some really, really cool stuff. And your name was one of the top two that was mentioned. And I'm like, screw it, I'll call her. I mean, what else? I'm sure she'll do it. We got to hear you speak at the last Summer Strong. I thought it was great. And so I wanted you to come on and kind of share your story and share your path on how you started out and then how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. Summer Strong was a ton of fun. It always is. I remember going to Summer Strong 7 many moons ago. And whenever they asked me to speak there, it was definitely a special opportunity that, especially after COVID, it meant a lot in a sense of we had been so separated from everybody for such a long period of time and in our bubbles, and to get back around people and kind of remember why we got into strength and conditioning in the first place. It was really, really nice. And sport, especially because I was making my transition at the time from Mississippi State. It was kind of like my last speaking engagement being the director there before I transitioned to this assistant AD of sports performance position at Pitt. So it was kind of bittersweet for me having that opportunity to kind of say goodbye to Mississippi State and be where I'm at now. So, and yes, thanks for having me on. I'm extremely excited.
Yeah. So again, we have a lot of female listeners, which is surprising because we get pretty vulgar on here. So it's weird that we get so many female listeners, but we do. And I think that, Ben's told me a lot about you. He's told me a lot about your path and how you started and where you got to today. And I just wanted you to start and just share that. Just share where you went to school, the sports you played, and how you got to be the assistant AD at Pitt.
Yeah, my passion for sports started out at a young age. I'm from like Western PA originally, and I was a gymnast, track, volleyball, pretty well rounded in high school. And then I specialized and decided to play college volleyball at West Virginia University. And that's where I'm like 5'3", and playing at a Power Five school. So I had to capitalize on my training in the weight room to really help me keep up with the rest of the Amazon women that I played
Sure.
with on the team. So I always had an extreme passion for the weight room and training, and I'd stick around all summer to prepare for season. And I had a really special relationship with my strength coach at the time, Corey Twine, in a sense of like I spent so many hours training with him that he made it enjoyable and challenged me and really made my career special. And actually, he left after my second year and left to go to Michigan to work with football. And I really realized after he had left, like nothing against the strength coaches that came after him, but he really changed my playing career in a really positive way. And I knew I didn't really want to be a sport coach. That wasn't my niche. I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. And he really inspired me from the get go. But I know whenever I called him to actually ask for advice about my first internship, he was like, "Oh man, you definitely don't want to be a strength coach." And I was like, "Wait, I'm calling you because I thought you'd be excited." And you're like, "Yeah, no, don't do it." He's like, "This is what goes into it, and this, that, the other." And he was testing me to see if I really wanted to do it, and out the gate, I actually interned with football at WVU with Mike Joseph, that's still there now. So I work with football and Olympic sports because they still ran a department that he was over everybody. So as the head football strength coach, actually, yeah, he's still there. Been there since 2013 when I interned. So that's pretty cool because we all know football tends to turn over
Yeah.
significantly. So it's been cool to have a mentor that's been at the same place in football at a high level. So he really got me to understand Daryl Bauer. He's the head strength coach at Houston now. They really put me through trials and tribulations to really get me to understand like what went into the field, challenged me like presentation wise, and really mentored me at a high level that allowed me to understand like what I wanted to do for people in the field, young professionals going forward. And I was lucky to have Beth Byron on the other side, on the Olympic sports side. She's at Ohio State now, actually. But yeah, I was lucky to be around really high level strength coaches early on in my career to kind of set the bar of how I should lead. And when I left that internship at WVU, I actually came up to Pitt, and that was still in 2013 in the summer. So it's kind of cool to come full circle of there's still coaches here at Pitt now that actually, when I was an intern, they saw me interning and they're still here. So like it's wild, and it's kind of cool to see that like I remember the back office where I used to sit in / storage closet. I'm like, all right, I want to make this better because it looks the same as when I interned here. So I want to create a better environment for them. But came to Pitt for the summer and then went to Clemson. I worked under Dennis Love for a few years down there. Clemson, I was an intern, and then I was a GA, and then I was an assistant, and then I was the assistant director. So I spent my 5 years at Clemson. I was really lucky to be under D Love. He had left after a couple of years to go to the Broncos, and then Rick Franzblau that's there now. Working under both of them was pretty extraordinary, and I think it allowed me to see that student athlete long term development. I was there for 5 years. Like nowadays as a strength coach, not many people are able to stay at a place for more than 3 years. So that was pretty neat to be able to see like the grassroots approach of things building up as I was there, because they had just kind of split off from football not too long ago, weight room staff, all the above. So I was like their second intern class way back when. So I was able to project up at one spot over time, which was awesome. And then, yeah, I made the leap from Clemson to go to Mississippi State and be the director of Olympic sports. I was there for 3 years. I was able to rebuild the whole entire weight room, renovate it with Sorinex. So that was awesome. My first director role to be able to do that and have the support from administration. And then, yeah, I just made the move here. I've been at Pitt for 7/8 weeks now. Just made the jump and hoping to, in a couple of years, we're starting a new project. I'm going to build a new weight room. So I'm excited to kind of run it back with Sorinex and do a new space. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at now and rocking and rolling.
So what made you said you didn't want a coaching job. What made you choose strength and conditioning over like coaching sports?
Yeah.
What was the
I think
draw to that side?
yeah. I just love training, to be honest. Like I love the weight room. When I was in the weight room working out, like I didn't see it as a job. You have some student athletes come in and they're grumbling. It's like the last thing I want to do. Like I'd go in the weight room and that's where I really thrived. It's like, all right, like if I love training that much and you can do this as a job, like hell yeah, sign me up, because I think like I was raised to do something, pick a career that you love, right? And not just do something just to go through the motions. I'm definitely not someone to halfway things by any means. So I was like, all right, it's a career of something that I truly enjoy and have a passion for. And like we need to have that when you're getting up at yay hours of the day,
Yeah.
and especially I think strength conditioning is quite unique because like even my family didn't understand. They're like, wait, you're doing internships and not getting paid any money? Like, what is that? You've been doing internships for like 2 years and for free. So when are you gonna get paid? So it's definitely something that you have to do that you love. And that's this. So I think too, like I said, my career as a student athlete, I had to capitalize on the weight room just because I was a little bit undersized, right? But yeah, that's why I definitely drew to strength and conditioning. But as I made that step from student athlete to like coach, S&C coach, I realized how much I did not know. I'd been lifting for so long, and I'm like, oh crap, now I have to program my own stuff, and I have no idea what's going on. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a steep learning curve as
Sure.
I started the profession.
So talk about the difference between, if you're an assistant AD now, that does that mean you oversee an entire department now, right? Because a lot of people, I know, I understand it a little bit from being around Ben for so many years before he came here, but like that's an assistant athletic director, right? That's what that stands for, right? So you're
Yes.
overseeing an entire athletic department.
Yeah, so it's pretty unique here, and Heather, like our AD, she's awesome in the sense of she has a true vision, for where she wants to take the performance model, and she's been around a lot of bright minds. But actually, this position prior to me coming here was just a director of Olympic sports, or head of Olympic sports, and when they were doing the hiring process for this position that I have now, that's when they changed it to assistant AD of sports performance. And I still have one team on the floor. So I have wrestling actually. And then, so I train those guys, and then I do have administrative duties. So I'm over the S&C department. So this weight room, weight room, basketball staff, women's basketball in particular, and then all these athletes in here. And then I'm also over the sports science department. So I'm going to be hiring a director of sports science here in the coming months. So I'll be building out that department from scratch. So it's my job to have a vision for sports science, where we want to take it, like what budget we're going to need, and really thinking through the process of as I build the new weight room called Victory Heights over yonder, just having the vision to build out sports science, how much room we're going to need it for it, and then like where am I going to put, like I want the sport coaches to see sports science clearly as like an area that they value, just like a strength coach, so their offices are going to be with ours, everyone's going to be streamlined in one space, and then all the testing battery and equipment. And so I think my job is to have a vision for 3 to 5 years of where we should take the S&C department and the sports science department, because that's why they call me like sports performance versus like director of strength conditioning. So I'm over those two entities.
That's awesome. So you're still training the men's wrestling team in the weight room.
Yeah, that's my one squad. Yeah. The guys are they're great. I don't know if you've been around wrestling, but Western PA, it's like
Oh
the
yeah,
sport.
yeah.
So
I wrestled
they
for
get
6 years.
oh heck yeah, then you got to come up. You got to
Man,
come visit.
I got. I mean, how nervous do they get when you walk into the room and start yelling at them?
Well, it's actually funny. So historically here at Pitt, when I interned here, the director was Kim King, so it was a female, and I interned for her, and she had wrestling back then. So like it's kind of been historically at Pitt
Oh,
that
that's cool
they've had
though.
a female strength coach, because even our head wrestling coach Keith, he wrestled at Pitt. He was a national champ, and he had Kim as his strength coach. So whenever I came on my interview, he's like, "All right, like we're another chick. This is awesome." And like you wouldn't really like stigma wise, like you wouldn't think that they'd be up for that, but like historically at the university, they've had a woman work with the team. But I think that's the badassness of just like being able to get on the floor and run the show. And I
Yeah,
think I've been lucky to be around a lot of like head males, that empower women. Like they never bat an eye of like, oh, I'm going to have you go warm up baseball. Like they never think about like, oh, I'm sending a girl out there to warm up the guys. Can they do it? Like I was lucky to be around men that they didn't even think anything of it. Whether it was my help with football at West Virginia, I was at Clemson with with D Love and Rick, they were just like, they empowered me in a really big way. And I think it's interesting because I've ran into other male administrators or professionals that sometimes they're like mind blown. They're like, oh my gosh, you're out there warming up like the baseball team. I've never seen that. So I think it really just depends on like who you surround yourself with. And I've been lucky to be around a lot of like directors of strength and conditioning that they're like, hell yeah, get out there and do the dang thing. Like you're better. They're like, you're better than the male interns. So I think it's just important as a female. I'm not really like the feminist by any means. Like I just like you just got to ball out and bring worth to the program. You know, that's your job. You got to bring something to the table, whether you're a male or female. But I've been lucky to be around a lot of like directors that are all about it. So,
Well, I think it's becoming more, I don't know the right word to use, but it's becoming more common to see women start doing more things like that. And I know I'm going to butcher her last name, and she's probably going to thump me in the head for it. But like, was it last week with the All-Star game when Rachel, I want to say Baklavich, I always butcher her last name. I'm sorry.
I know Rachel for sure with the
Yeah,
Yankees.
but she was like the
Yankees,
first
so.
first female to ever coach in the All-Star game. And I was laying there on the couch. I'm like, man, this is pretty cool. You don't ever see this, but I mean, it's becoming more and more common that you're starting to see that kind of stuff. I think it's awesome. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think they had the first like all female broadcasting staff last night for like an MLB game too.
On
They
MLB
were putting
Network.
it up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I
yeah.
saw
I
that.
was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So it's definitely becoming a thing. But you also want to be, you want to keep an eye on if it's the publicity's done as well. Like, are they
sure.
hiring you based off of like your criteria and your resume and like you're fit for the job, or is it? So it's like I think a happy medium because I've found myself like maybe you get different calls about different jobs and you're just like you have to be aware, and just know like well, clearly my resume is like up to par, but hopefully they're calling me for the right reasons.
How
You
often do
know,
you think that happens?
you know, probably more often than people think. I
Uh-huh.
just personally know I've been contacted about certain things, and it's just like I think you have to be so strategic with your career and like moves that you make, and really do your homework behind certain jobs and organizations and all that jazz. So I think I've been lucky, like I said, to be around good people that it's like, all right, make sure before you go take a position, you like check all these boxes. So you're not just jumping into something and then you get there and then you're like, oh crap, like what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
And then you end up, that's how some people get burned out and get out of the field because it's just like you gotta make sure you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's.
Let's get back to the strength and conditioning thing. There was something that I wanted to ask you, and I know it's been a conversation that Ben and I have had a million different times, and it's something that I don't even know. I don't know if there's a way to change it, but you mentioned turnover earlier. You mentioned a lot of strength coaches are lucky to last some at a place for longer than 3 years, and I haven't been around a big P5 school really ever. Most of my the things that I've been around is right here in Wilmington at UNCW, and they're still a D1 school, but they're obviously not in that Power 5 category. And so the one thing I've noticed by being around him and some other strength coaches and then getting into the Sornex community and talking to those guys at different events and just hearing them tell stories back and forth about how much they've moved around, and I'm like, I don't know how you guys do that. I don't know how you guys still love to do what you do when there's no like security blanket. You could buy a house with your wife and kids and train at a school for 1 year, and then the coach gets fired and you're like, oh, well, now I got to go find another place to like, there's just not really that much security. So I don't know. Talk about that for a minute because, when I met Ben at UNCW, that was one of the things that drew me into the culture that him and Kyle were building there was just, man, they were creative. They had to think of different ways to get, the kids' attention, to get them bought in, to do everything they could to improve, their performance there. And some of the creative things that they did blew me away. And that's kind of how I got to be such good friends with them because I was fortunate enough to be able to give back to them on the level that I was. So, I mean, is there anything that these smaller schools can do to not have that anymore? Or, I mean, is that just kind of the nature of the beast and the way that it is in that world?
Yeah, I think sadly it's only progressively gotten worse, especially in football. Like people would sign up for jobs and you'd think you'd have at least 5 years. now you get a job and you're like, all right, I'm kind of guaranteed three, but not even much. Like, it's just tough, especially in the football side of things. Olympic sports, I think, it's just a different ball game in the sense of, like, I know 5 years ago, 8 years ago, people were getting paid as like assistants, like $25,000 to $30,000, like for an assistant role, and it's like, shoot, I could go work at Target and make this. Like,
Yeah.
so I think just trying to create more respect for our roles and positions, and I think that's something that I've tried to really put on the forefront as I've had my leadership role at Mississippi State and now at Pitt is the salary range, and if you're creating a position, making sure it's a respectable amount that people can actually like live from and have a family on. So I think that's one thing that I've paid attention to with taking my last job and this job is just like investment from administration into strength and conditioning. And that's something I've asked on my interview process. I come in and it's like, all right, talk to me about like how you've invested into our area of the performance team, so to speak. Talk to me about some examples over the past like few years, staffing wise. Have you added positions? Have you added to the weight room? Like, how's the budget kind of projected up? And I think it's important to ask questions like that as you sit down with some of these higher up roles, like above me, whether it's the AD or the CFO. Asking questions of how they value continuing education, how they value like the salaries, and it's our job as head people to like fight for that, and battle for that, and be like, hey, if they tell you they want to pay like $35,000 to an assistant role, like in Pittsburgh, it's like, well, cost of living here is clearly going to be more in the city, and like, no, we're not paying below like 55, we're 60, making sure that we're not like selling our souls, and we got to show that we're valued. And I think that's something that I saw coming here, especially with them changing this role to an administrative role. There's a lot of places in the country that it's very few and far in between that you see strength coaches have an AD type title and have like kind of quote unquote a seat at the table. But I think we're fighting. One thing I'd like to see at some point, with strength and conditioning is, and this might be wishful thinking, but some type of like state licensure in a sense of like, if you look at a lot of the health professionals like sports med, PTs, sports psychology, dietitians, they all have some type of state licensure. And I think the one thing that we're missing in the S&C community is that, because I think that will really validate our seat at the table, so to speak. Like a lot of the head of the performance team positions are people that are from an athletic training or sports med background, just because like the ADs trust them. They're like, all right, they have a high level licensure and we can trust them, but strength and conditioning, they've seen and been exposed to like a very wide variety depending on all the schools they've been at. So I think that could help clean up kind of the hiring process and the people that are in the field. But I think there's a lot of different things floating in the air of how we could make the field better, but so many people will be willing to just take a salary of $26,000, so like, don't sell your soul, ideally.
Yeah,
Fight for more
especially
respect.
a second year intern not making any money would definitely take it for sure.
Yeah, so I think we really need to kind of like up, like whoever's in a leadership role out there in the S&C world, like myself and whoever else are directors, really just fight with administration to like create, we're not going below this, like what do the athletic trainers get paid, across the organization? Like, all right, we should be seen similar to that, or the dietitian salaries, it shouldn't be like, oh, they have an average salary of $80,000 and then you have strength and conditioning over here making an average salary of 40. It's like, wait, and like there's an athletic trainer with every single team, which like athletic training is our biggest ally, right? And that's the person that we spend the most time with as strength coaches. But that's why I think the licensure piece would help, with validity of our seat at the table in a lot of situations.
I think it's also kind of staggering to me whenever we're having that conversation, because from what I've seen and what I've heard, when athletes leave a school, whether they go play professionally or they go into whatever career it is that they were going to do, that relationship that they had with their strength coach is the one that is like long lasting. Something, I mean, in most cases, I would say more than a head coach or an assistant coach on the team. And I mean, I know that's the case because I still talk to a lot of athletes that been coaches that we've had beers with on the weekends and stuff. And these are kids that graduated 3 years ago, and then the pro ball players that come back into Wilmington every year that have played in the big leagues, they just come back and they'll hit here in Wilmington in the indoor cages because of the strength coach that's there. You know what I mean? It's just weird to me. I don't know. I've I guess I just don't understand that world.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like myself, like my college strength coach was the reason that I got into the field. You know,
Sure.
they left such a heavy impact on me that that's what I picked for my career, you know, because he really got me to understand the why behind training and how it could impact performance on the court. I'm like, man, like if I didn't have him, like I wouldn't have capitalized on my abilities, you know, in college as a student athlete because you get 4 years, you know, and that's it, minus COVID year, all that jazz right now. Now kids get 5 or 6 magically, but yeah, I think sometimes that's overlooked for sure.
Well, I know guys like me are going to capitalize on that in one way or another. Um, you know, entrepreneurs that run large companies would kill to have employees that were strength coaches. Because I mean, think I can speak for every guy in this room that knows Ben, and you know, we bust his chops and we give him hell every day. But you know, the fact of the matter is, he went from one coaching role to another one. You know, now he's coaching our franchisees from the minute that they come in and they pay our franchise fee and sign a lease. You know, he coaches them through that process, and so that was one of my notes here is why do you think that all strength coaches kind of have the same mentality? I mean, it is true. If you're in a room with a lot of them, their personality traits, a lot of them are the same. Have you ever noticed that, or is that?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting because I think my job is now like to kind of hire people that like round me out on my staff. You know, if I had like 5 of me on the staff, the weight room would be on fire. You
Sure.
know, like
Yeah.
literally. So I try to hire people that like one have little like diverse skill sets from me. So like if I'm not the best with the sports science piece, like I have to be dangerous in all areas as the head person 100%, but I have to find people that have like niches on staff and also different personalities that fit to like that's what I'm doing right now. I met with all the sport coaches, you know, and I'm kind of reassigning strength coaches to different teams. I'm looking at assessing like, all right, what relationships weren't going well before? Like what were the sport coaches that are like, I need a change in my strength coach because some of the sport coaches, depending on like who they had in college, they have personal biases. So like, for example, like my strength coach in college was like a little bit more introverted. Actually, he works with the military now, but disciplinary, like didn't mess around. Like we came in, it was business, and we all like respected him at a high level, you know. But if I have a sport coach over here, you know, and they're like, hey, we want someone that's high energy, you know, like high dopamine, definitely like type A, and I put them with somebody that's like super like, introvert or like analytical, you know, very science based, like that's probably not going to work out all that well.
Yeah.
So I think in the Olympic world, sometimes you see like varying personalities depending upon the sports they've worked around and exposure they've had. But yeah, like football, you definitely see. And I started in football. Definitely some type A personalities, 100%. I can get down with that.
So one of my other questions was, what do you think has been like your biggest challenge from when you got into this to where you are now? Do you see a consistent challenge that always pops up and you're like, damn it, I got to figure this out again?
Yeah. I definitely say when I made my leap from when I was at Clemson as the assistant director and I took my first head job, I like knew there was a learning curve. Like, and I was super thankful that Rick prepared me, the director at Clemson now, at a very high level, like taking me to meetings with admin, having me help handle the budget, uh, have difficult conversations with sport coaches. But when I took my first head job and I stepped into the weight room and I'm like, all right, I'm over 10 different teams, 10 different head coaches. I got to hire a whole entire staff. I got to build a whole new weight room. Like this was in my first, within my first 3 months. I had to do all these things. When you're the person in charge, it's just a whole different ball game. You know, you have to have all the tough conversations. You have to be the bad guy. You have to tell people no. So I was extremely thankful to have that leadership responsibility at a little bit smaller scale. You know, like depending on the school that you're at, like you may have 10 or 9 Olympic sports, and now I'm walking into a school that has 16 to 18 different Olympic sports, like at a very bigger macro level. I'm in an administrative role, like kind of have to balance a lot of different responsibilities. I may go talk to donors today, and I got to go put on like a suit, and then I have to go train wrestling on the floor, you know, like 2 hours later. So I think I have more hats that I have to wear here, in a sense of working on campus, working with administration, but still being involved on the floor, which I like. If I was just doing the administrative thing and that was it, I think that'd be,
Yeah, you get
I don't
bored.
know. I don't know if I'm ready to completely do all that. I enjoy getting on the floor and coaching still and showing that I still got it to the staff. Like I'm still in it, guys, hanging with you. But yeah, I think like I know my boss warned me. He's like, anytime you take over a new head job, or a new director role, like that first year is a grind. If someone tells you different, they're lying to you. Like you got to put in so much time. I have to get to know all these kids, like 350 names, like within a couple months. So get to know all the sport coaches, like all the administration. So I think the first year is just really like building momentum. And if you've read the Good to Great book, they talk about like a flywheel
Hmm.
concept, right? It takes so much time, like an energy to get the wheel just like going. But once you get it revolving, and the right people, quote unquote, on the bus, and hired and see your vision through and support you, like keeping it going is easy, right? As you get that thing rolling and getting the right people around you and hiring more staff. But like that first year is definitely like different challenges and different roles. Like my Mississippi State director role, I had certain challenges. In this role, I have certain challenges. But I think like really just making sure before you take a head job, like know that first year is gonna be tough, and you're gonna question like, did I make the right decision? Like, oh my gosh, you gotta like keep pounding the stone, keep going. And like you were talking about the Sorex thing, like you gotta be a savage. You gotta have some conversations that are tough. You gotta be willing to really my like why, right? I talk to the staff about it is like get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I remind myself of that, like, hey, if I'm at a place and things are getting easy and I feel like I'm not growing anymore, like it's time for a change, and that's what
Right.
I knew coming here. I was gonna have new challenges that I need to evolve and step up to, that will put me outside my comfort zone. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, it did for sure.
Soapbox.
I thought of another one though while you were talking about that, and you were talking about that first year and coming into a new role. I don't want to use the word deal with, but we have to think about it too on our end on the in the business that we're in, right? So when you go to a new school and you take a new head job, is it one of the most challenging things? It would be for me, I know, just because of the guy that I am. Would be the hardest thing to do. Would be to figure out who's there and how to talk to them and like how to lead them. Because stepping into that leadership role, not everybody likes to be led the same way. So if you go in there like with an iron fist and just say, "All right, this is how we're gonna do it," you know what I mean? And not everybody's gonna be in tune with that. That would be that to me would be a challenge.
Yeah, no, and that's the one thing that you see with Olympic sports kind of versus football. And I started in football, so I'm not meaning to rag on it whatsoever, but like when a football staff flips at a Power Five school, usually you get to bring all your people. Like I show up with the five strength coaches, like we're rocking and rolling, and I know I can trust, and there's loyalty and all that jazz. Like as a head of the performance department, like I'm inheriting like the basketball strength coaches, the Olympic sports strength coaches. And luckily, I am able to hire three more paid positions, like as I come into this role. But yeah, you're inheriting different people that may come from different backgrounds, training wise, and their coaching philosophy and all that jazz. So I think coming in and being honest with people is the most important, right? And what I did, like I actually laid out on my interview what the first 90 days would look like as I come in and take over the program. And I think it's really just gathering intel. Like I sat down with all the head sport coaches and kind of asked like about their current like team assignment, like their strength coach, what are their thoughts, where can the program grow, what even equipment or sports science pieces like technology do you want to add in the space, and really just doing a thorough check-in with all the sport coaches to get an understanding of like how their experience has been with this department. But first and foremost, I sat down with the staff, and it's really important within like your first 2 days that you go through like what our main objectives are, what's my mission statement, what's our goal, and then getting them to understand like these are my expectations, and you're clear and concise on that. I laid out everything, and it's a very lengthy meeting, but it's like this is where I'm at, this is what I value within the staff. Like I need to be able to trust you. You need to be loyal. Like I trust you until you prove me wrong. So trust, loyalty, consistency, work ethic. You always want to be learning. Like this is where I'm at. Like clearly, I'm the leader of the organization. Like I need you to either get on board or like we got to part ways. And these are conversations. I'm just super blunt. I'm doing them a disservice if I'm like sugarcoating things.
Sure.
And I'm brought in to they're changing the role, and I'm brought in to do a job. And I need to get that done. So it's one of those things like you either want to get on or get off, and I'll support you in either one that you want to do. And it's kind of harsh, but some people are too scared to have those conversations. And I think I met with them as a staff and then I met with them all one-on-one. And I think that's where you really kind of break the shell and get to the inner pieces. And I even talked to Brett Bartholomew. I remember I was talking with him and he was telling me like, you really don't know people's true colors. Like within the first 30 days, like that you don't really know until like really 6 months in. And you're like, all right, these are the people that they actually are, and I'm really big on trust and loyalty, and if you give me reasons not to trust you, like this is probably not going to be a good relationship. That's also like personally, outside
Sure.
the weight room too. Just be a good person, and even if you're not the smartest person in the room, that's okay. I can help develop you. That's my job. But yeah, I think it's tough. Like some people are scared to have those tough conversations and then they like beat around the bush and gossip or whatever else. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not about that. That's some BS
Mm-mm.
right there. So, yeah, you kind of have to just be aware of your situation when you come in. And really, it's hard. You really can't trust anybody, to a certain degree. You're like, this is where I'm at. Let's
We
take some time to evaluate. Like you're feeling me out, I'm feeling you out. And I think that's what makes it hard. Like even within the first 30 days, it's just a lot of evaluations and trying to gather intel and figure out who you can believe and who you can't and see through the BS. And yeah, just really truly evaluate the situation and kind of give everyone a fair shot to speak their side of the story.
sure.
So
We kind of we have the same thought process here in the sense that in the franchise world we have 60 units open. We have man, I can't even. Ben would know this off the top of my head, and I should, but there's over 70 individual franchisees now that come into this thing, and so I don't really tell everybody this out loud, but I kind of think of our company now as a strength and conditioning department, just because I've seen the way that these units operate, and it's exactly what we were just talking about. And I've told our staff here many times, like, not every one of our franchisees can be led the same way. So the tough part for us in the office here when we're trying to, develop a new program or, hold people accountable to our standards and our design standards and operational standards, if they screw up and they make a mistake, I know that there's a group of guys over here that I can go and I can lose my shit on. I can just say, hey, man, you're an idiot. You got to do it this way, and then we'll cuss at each other for 4 or 5 minutes, and then it's water under the bridge, and we're talking about deer hunting, and in 6 minutes after that conversation, you know what I mean? It's just, and then
yeah.
there's other ones where I have to completely approach that from a different way, and I'm like, okay, I got to be nice here, you know what I mean? It's a challenge to have those tough conversations. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's very, very difficult, and it's not easy to do.
Yeah. No, that was actually one of my questions I had for like the first initial sit down with everybody on the strength staff is like, how do you take feedback? Like, well, like, and critical thinking. And it's like, hey, well, I like to sit down. Like sometimes it's not like group setting, right? If we're in a staff meeting and I got to MF somebody, like, don't do it in front of everybody because they just don't respond well. And they
Sure.
won't, their work ethic and their work won't get any better. They'll just take it personal. But I think I really try to draw the line in the sand of like, there's personal and professional. I want to be able to go grab lunch with you or dinner or hang out on the weekend, but like understand that's the personal side of things. Like when we step back in here, you got to understand when I'm giving you feedback and everything else, like it's professional. So being able to draw that line in the sand and like you said, figure out how people respond well, to get the most out of them. So that's like in a leadership role, that's our job, like I got to get
Yeah.
the most out of you to help me. So let's work together on this.
Well, I'm going to use the word culture, and Luke Day kind of like took my head off for using that word in an interview. He's like, I don't like that word. But like cultural things, what are some of your favorite cool activities that you guys have done and like with teams when you're training them? And I know the reason I'm asking this is because I remember like Ben and Kyle would do some really goofy stuff. Like they'd take the team down to the beach and do like center mass ball workouts. They were always coming up with like creative, fun activities for teams to do. And what are some of those cool ones that you've done? Because I've heard other guys tell these, and I love hearing these stories because I've heard some weird shit.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny that you say with Luke Day, the culture thing. Like, I hate the question about philosophy. I'm like, what's your philosophy? And I'm like, that's just such a loaded question. So
Yeah.
everyone kind of has like their trigger word,
Yeah.
right? But actually, so it was funny the other day. So our head football strength coach, Mike Stacchiotti, I worked with him at Mississippi State. So they had posted a video of him the other day doing a wall sit with the guys as like initiation. They were listening to Sweet Caroline, which they play at the Pitt football games, but it's like definitely a Pitt song. I was like, oh man, we need to start doing that with all the teams. So that's just one that comes like randomly to mind, 100%. I think like yeah, football does a way better job with the creative piece, but I know like the one big thing for wrestling here is they've done some different. There's like this hill called Dara. So Pitt is literally on like a mountain. You know, like we're at the top. One Pittsburgh's super hilly, you know.
Yeah.
But there's this hill Dara, and we used to do like you would carry up like a guy that was the same like weight as you, of course, weight class, carry them up the hill of Dara, but you're running like past. There's a bunch of hospitals around, so they're like watching you like carry up your partner
Oh
up
my
the hill. And
God.
the hospital workers are like, "Oh my gosh, this is insane!" But historically, that's something that I've seen done with wrestling in particular. So you guys need to get ready because anything can happen. That's for
Hopefully,
sure.
hopefully that's not done in the wintertime when there's snow on the ground.
True. That's a good point. I'm
Yeah.
not used to the snow, so I got to get
Ugh.
reacclimated. That's for sure. We've done an Omaha challenge. One that comes to mind in particular at Clemson when I helped with baseball. We took out the rowing boats, and that was one of those stations. And I had to be like a coxswain with the headset on with the guys, and it was just not going well. And I was taking it very personal. I was like, "Get it together, guys!" And then one guy like fell out of the boat. So yeah. That's another creative idea. It's like, all right, what other sports can we partake in that we have on campus that could one they can get hurt doing because that's not a good idea.
Sure.
But two, like just make them look like complete fools, really humble them, right? But that's one in particular. I'm like sitting with the headset. I'm like, this is just a mess. None of these guys have ever rowed a boat in their whole life. So
One of the guys I remember watching, I haven't seen him online in a while. I don't really know if he's still there. The guy from Kennesaw State. Some of the stuff that he used to have his teams do.
oh,
Football.
Jim.
Yeah. That guy was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. No, I think depending on the school that you're at, like there's some cool like history behind some of them for sure, and what they've like consistently done. Some people are like, "What are they doing?" But it's like, no, this is like kids get excited about this. You know, they get amped up to come back and do it. So
Well, I've got one more question, a serious question, and the reason that I wanted to ask this is, you know, Yvonne and I have two daughters, and they're great kids, and Gracie's going to kill me for asking this if she ever listens to this episode, but, you know, our oldest daughter, Shelby's a nurse, and not really sure if she's confident in the decision that she made, right? And then Gracie is 4 years younger, and she's trying to finish school and become a dental assistant and trying to take that route. But I mean, and maybe it's just natural. I think it's just young women that age, they just don't really know what the hell they want to do. They're just really insecure. So, like, I was going to ask you, what's one piece of advice that you would give young women specifically, but not necessarily just women, any young person today that, you know, I lost my train of thought there, but just what's one good piece of advice for somebody who's insecure, doesn't really know if they're confident in the route they're taking, I guess is a good way to put that.
yeah, I think it's all about like who you surround yourself with, you know, and when you're deciding like whether it's an internship or this that, and the other, like you need to do your research on where you're going and like projectability of that place. You know, like people that have gone there, have they projected on to take like bigger and badder jobs, or have they gone there and gotten burned out and like beat to the ground? You know, that's one thing that I think about is like I was lucky to be around people that like if I question myself, they like pushed me. They're like, no, you can do that. So I think like you got to think about who you're consistently surrounding yourself with. Like you're a combination of what, like the 4 or 5 people that you spend the most time with, you know. So I think making sure that you're making wise decisions on who you're hanging out with or working with, especially because we spend so much time in the weight room. So really doing your homework on who you're going to work around, I think, and just like investing in yourself. You know, like don't be afraid to go sign up for like certain conferences that you know you're gonna be the only chick. I can't even tell you how many places I've been and I'm like, oh, it's just me and one other person. It's great because the bathroom lines are always short. You know, you go there, you're like, oh, the guy's line is out the door, and I'm like, get the dudes. great. But never be afraid to go to different conferences that you know, or like I think a lot of young people coming into the field now, like they they think they can like specialize or like they're too good for certain jobs. It's like no, you need to like any opportunity that's getting thrown at you, like you need to go and take it. You know, like oh, I want to specialize and work with baseball, so I'm only gonna look at baseball jobs. And it's like no, I think you can benefit so much, especially at a young age with working with all of the teams, you know, and I was lucky to start with football. So I got that exposure. And then I worked with literally every team under the sun and worked with like centralized departments because when you're working with like a field sport, like the soccer, you're working about energy system development. When you're working with like a softball and baseball, it's more rotational work. You're working with track, you learn about like heavy lifting protocols and peaking at different times. So I think like one thing that I'm seeing more and more is like young strength coaches specializing at an early age. So that's kind of frustrating because you're really like limiting your development. And
Sure.
when they're hiring for roles such as myself, like they're looking for people that can speak to any recruit on the floor, speak to any head coach, and have the hard conversations and be able to kind of like wheel and deal and be intelligent. So, but the other thing with like females in particular, because I get so many phone calls from like young females in the field, and they call me and they're like, I want to come, let's say, intern for you because you're a female and I look up to you. And I'm like, at the end of the day, you want to go and intern for like the best professional out there. So sometimes don't get so wrapped up into like the gender stuff, you know, and just like really focus on like, I want to go work for the best person and not sometimes fall into that rabbit hole. So that's what I tell them. I'm like, hey, yeah, of course I'm biased. Like I'd love for you to come and join the program, but I think you need to make sure your train of thought is going in the right direction of like, I want to go work for the best professional out there. And yeah, I think building confidence just comes from like who's building you up around you. If you're constantly around people that are beating you down, like you should probably question who you're hanging out with, you know. And I remember like my parents at a young age, they were like, you're hanging out with the wrong crowd, like this isn't good.
I think we all heard that.
Yeah. I think it comes down to this. I know I've kind of like gone personal and then like S&C world, but yeah, I think I've never limited myself in like what I thought I could achieve. Like so many positions, like I've been told like, oh, you got that position because they were hiring for like a female in that position, and it's like, no, actually, like they were literally looking at they're both favoring towards a male because of like it was working with like a testosterone based sport. But if you sell yourself short before you go into the interview and you're like, oh, they want to hire a guy, like no, you can't ride like that. You got to be like all the chips in. So I think those are kind of my 2 cents on that for sure.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that as you were saying that, I'm thinking of the two instances with our daughters, and you know, Gracie, the youngest one, she had an opportunity to intern under a very good friend of mine who also happens to be a CrossFit savage. This chick, I always joke with people and say that my dentist can kick your dentist's ass because I mean she's a beast. She's a beast. She's
Yeah.
a really good friend of me and my wife's, and she, you know, she offered Gracie this internship, and I think honestly, I think Gracie was just young. I think she was just intimidated by it and was scared to do it. When I think that if she had taken that, Melissa would have boosted her up, and she would have had so much more confidence that she does now. And you know, I think it's mind-boggling how many people there are out there that happens to. That if they, like you said, if they would have been around better, influential people to lift them up, they would have made a better decision or wouldn't have that insecurity. And the same thing with Shelby, the oldest daughter. You know, when she got out of nursing school, she was working in oh man, they're gonna chop me for this one too, but it was like she was with cancer patients all day long, and it was like it was so draining to her. Like it was just the energy in something like that. I mean, you could imagine that. And so I think she was calling Yvonne and saying, I don't know if I made the right choice. Like, I don't want to do this. It's every day I come to work, I'm always bummed out. And Yvonne's trying to, you know, boost her up and say, look, you have to start at the ground level. You have to start and work your way up. And, you know, I know this isn't what you want to do, but, you know, someday you'll be, you know, a boutique nurse or do something in a clinic that you want to do that's, you know, lavish and positive and bright and all those things. So I agree 1,000% with what you said.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes I get frustrated. I'm like, how are you not breathing confidence into the world?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it really sometimes you gotta like run through a brick wall, you know, and clearly one of the speakers he was talking about like F fear, right? You know, like sometimes we build up this fear in our mind that like, why is it even there?
Yeah.
And I think you got to really just step out your comfort zone and make it a constant. You got to be consistent with doing that and challenging yourself. But if you consistently like take the safe route, then it is what it is. So you are what you consistently do. So yeah. I think it's pretty cool. Like even at Summer Strong, I like didn't really think about it until someone said it to me. But they're like, "You're the only female speaker here. Can you believe that?" And I'm like, "What does that even mean?"
Yeah.
So like, I was like, I didn't even realize that. But yeah, I think it's cool opportunities that you want to. If you do have the opportunity, like to be the only female speaker, like you better rock it so you can create opportunities for more females coming behind you. And like a lot of females are looking at you, like looking up to you at that point. I can't even tell you how many emails I got after Summer Strong about like, man, I never thought I could be in like a role like yours until like I'm seeing you do it. Like that's powerful. That's really cool.
That's
I
awesome.
want to call you and kind of chat. So I think I got lucky like young in my career. I think people like don't take advantage of whether it's like Twitter or Instagram to kind of just reach out and chat with other like it's like, all right, hey, I kind of like what they're doing. Like let's chat and figure it out, and build your network, but don't be like over the top with it. You're like constantly just making calls to everybody under the sun and you're like, oh, actually, I'm just calling everybody to ask for a job, but
Yeah.
really call out of like the goodness of your heart and be like, hey, like I like what you're doing. Let's stay in touch and kind of bounce ideas back and forth. That's the beauty of social media.
For sure.
It's a good side, but there's also, of course, the bad side as well. You get into trouble.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, this was great, man. I can't thank you enough for your time. This was awesome. I had a lot of fun.
No, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited. If you ever want to come to Pittsburgh, I love you had a Permati sandwich. It's definitely not up to par with the whole clean eats thing. We can take the fries off though,
Listen,
make it more healthy.
I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but I know you're going to know what it is. The outdoor food court that's in downtown Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe.
It's like they call it like the square, or Scott's looking it up right now. We're like on the food committee here, so food is our love language. But they have this outdoor food court in downtown Pittsburgh, and there is a sub place there that I still, when I think about it, my mouth salivates. I can't for the life of me think of what it is, but it was a sandwich. It was so big and so good. I can't remember what it was, but
Right. Did you get any pierogies? No.
you're gonna obviously not, because I'm trying to think of what they are.
They're like a Polish type food. They kind of look like a ravioli-ish. They have like potatoes stuffed in them with onions. They're really good.
Yeah.
So I think you need to come back and you need to taste test Pittsburgh all over again now that you got the hookup.
Well, we have 5 locations coming to Pittsburgh, so we'll be up that way soon. Well,
Heck yeah. It has to be our cheat day.
Yeah. I don't care about that. I'll do it anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Stephanie. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. No, thank you. And we'll be in touch.
All right, guys. Till next time.